The millionaire left a 0 tip, but the single mother waitress found a secret note. In 30 years of serving tables, I've never seen such a rich man humiliate such a poor woman with such coldness, all for a folded piece of paper. Those were the words of Mama Nkechi, the oldest cook at the Baobab Tree Eatery. The afternoon everything changed. But to understand why a millionaire was capable of writing 0 naira on the tip line and leaving a single word that would break a single mother's heart, we have to start from the beginning. We have to know Ngozi. Ngozi Okoro was 28 years old, though the tiredness in her green eyes added 10 years to her age. Her brown hair was pulled back in a messy bun that came undone halfway through her shift, and her light blue uniform with white trim had been mended 3 times at the elbows. By 5 a.m., she was already on her feet. By 6 a.m., she dropped her son, Cheek, at Mama Doop's, the neighbor who cared for him, in exchange for a few naira and the food portions Ngozi managed to save at the end of her shift. By 6:30 a.m., she crossed the door of the Baobab, tied her apron, and began a day that wouldn't end until past midnight. The Baobab Tree Eatery was one of those old roadside establishments. Large windows letting in the sun, worn red leather seats, a black and white tiled floor, and a chrome counter that Ngozi polished every morning until she saw her reflection in it. It smelled of freshly brewed coffee, bacon, and toast. For many, it was just a stopover. For Ngozi, it was the only wall separating her from the street. That Thursday morning, she had accepted a double shift, as almost always, not because she wanted to, but because the hospital bill remained unpaid, and because Cheek, her 6-year-old boy, had woken up with a fever again. He was coughing all night again. Mama Dupe had told her when she dropped him off. "Nozi, that child needs a real doctor, not just pharmacy syrup." "I know," she had replied, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I'll get paid this week. I'll take him this week. I promise." It was the same promise she made herself every week, and every week something got in the way. The rent, the electricity, Chaik's torn shoes, the old debt that grew like a shadow. Chaik had been born with a chest condition. Doctors spoke of a specialist treatment in the city, of tests that cost more than Ngozi earned in 3 months. And the child's father, well, the child's father had left before Chike learned to say Papa. One night he was there, the next morning he wasn't, and with him went the few certainties Ngozi had about the future. Since then, she was alone, truly alone, with no family to support her, no savings, no other safety net than her own exhausted body and her intact pride, because that she did have pride. Not the arrogant pride of someone who thinks they are better than others, but the silent pride of someone who, even with everything against her, never stopped smiling at customers, never served a dish without wishing them, "Enjoy your meal," never allowed her misery to seep into her work. "Good morning, can I take your order?" she would say with a warmth that wasn't feigned, because Ngozi, despite everything, liked people. That afternoon, the eatery was quiet. Lunch was over, and dinner was still hours away. Ngozi was taking the opportunity to refill napkin dispensers when the bell on the door rang. A man entered. He wasn't just any customer. She knew it immediately, as all waitresses in the world do, the moment a stranger crosses the threshold. He wore a bespoke black suit, one of those that cost more than a car, with a white open-collared shirt, no tie, like someone who doesn't need to prove anything because he already has everything. He walked unhurriedly, with a cold, almost distant confidence. He must have been in his late 30s, with a sharp face, a tense jaw, the look of someone who had long stopped expecting good things from others. He sat in the secluded booth at the back by the window where the afternoon sun fell directly. Ngozi approached with the menu and her usual smile. "Good afternoon. Welcome to the Baobab. Can I get you something to drink while you decide?" The man didn't even look at her. His eyes were fixed on his phone. Coffee, black, and water. Right away. Ngozi wasn't offended. She was used to it. She had learned long ago that behind a customer's coldness there was almost always something. A bad day, a sorrow, an invisible burden. So she returned with the steaming coffee and the glass of water and placed them gently. "Whenever you're ready to order, I'll be here." The man finally looked up, and for a second, just 1 second, something in his eyes seemed to pause as they met hers. Ngozi had those kind of green eyes that one doesn't forget. Deep, clear, too sad for such a young woman. But the man quickly looked away, as if reproaching himself for having been distracted. "What do you recommend?" he asked in a tone that sounded more like an interrogation than a question. "The meat pie is freshly made, and the soup of the day is vegetable. Very comforting. If you ask me, on an afternoon like this, I'd go for the soup and a good coffee." "I didn't ask what you would do." The comment was dry, Sharp. Any other person would have shrunk. Ngozi just widened her smile a little. "You're right. My apologies. I'll give you a minute." And she retreated without losing her composure. From the kitchen, Mama Nkechi had seen everything. "That man is looking for trouble," she muttered. "Be careful with him, my daughter. He's just a tired man, Mama Nkechi, like everyone else. Tired men don't wear 10 million watches." Ngozi smiled and continued with her work. The man eventually ordered the soup and the meat pie. He ate in silence, barely looking at the plate, typing on his phone, taking calls in a low voice, with words like, "Contract, no percentage, I won't accept less." Ngozi came and went, refilling his water, clearing empty dishes, asking if everything was to his liking, always with the same kindness. And the man always responded with monosyllables or silences. There was a moment, however, when something strange happened. Ngozi received a message from Mama Dupa. "Cheek has a high fever again. What should I do?" And for a fraction of a second, as she read it behind the counter, Ngozi's face broke just for an instant. She pressed the phone to her chest, closed her eyes, took a deep breath, then typed, "Cold compresses. I'll leave as soon as I can. Hang in there, my love." And she put her phone away again and put on her smile as one puts on a mask. The man in the black suit saw it. He saw everything. The tremor, the held breath, the forced smile afterwards. And for the first time all afternoon, he put his phone down on the table and truly watched her. When he finished eating, he asked for the bill. Ngozi brought it on the usual small tray with a mint candy on the side, as she did for everyone. "It was a pleasure serving you. Have a very good afternoon." The man took out his wallet, paid in crisp new Naira notes, then took the receipt and with a silver pen, wrote something on the tip line. He stood up, buttoned his jacket, and before leaving, placed the receipt face down on the table. He walked towards the door without saying goodbye. The bell rang, and he was gone. Ngozi cleared the table, and then saw the receipt. On the line where customers write the tip, in elegant, firm handwriting, the man had written 0 and underneath a single word, "Enough." Ngozi stared at the paper. 0. After a bill of over 40,000. After 2 hours of impeccable service, of smiles, of water refilled 1,000 times, of enduring his dryness without a single complaint. 0. And that word, "enough." As if to say, "You've had enough of me. You've received enough. You don't deserve more." Like a written slap, Ngozi felt heat rising to her face. It wasn't about the money, though God knew how much she needed every coin that week. It was about the humiliation, about the calculated coldness of that gesture, about the feeling that to that man, she was not a person, but a piece of furniture to be served and discarded. Tears burned her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Not there, not in front of everyone. "How much did he leave you?" Mama Nkechi asked, peeking out. Ngozi didn't answer. She just clenched the receipt in her fist. "My daughter, how much?" "Nothing," Ngozi whispered. "He left me nothing." Mama Nkechi approached, took the paper from her hand, and read it. Her face hardened. "Son of, enough. Who does this man think he is? I'm going out there, and I'm going to tell him a few things." "No, Mama Nkechi, leave it. It's not worth it." "Of course it's worth it. You spent the whole afternoon waiting on him like a king." Mama Nkechi, Ngozi looked at her with those green eyes, now moist but firm. "If I go out to fight with every customer who treats me badly, I'd never finish. I have a child with a fever waiting for me. I have no energy for pride, only for survival." And that sentence, spoken softly, without drama, with the naturalness of someone who had repeated it too many times, was sadder than any cry. Mama Nkechi hugged her. Ngozi allowed herself to be hugged for a second, just one, and then pulled away. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and returned to work. Because the shift wasn't over. Because life didn't stop. Because single mothers don't have the luxury of breaking down in the middle of the afternoon. That night, when she finally got home, she found Cheek asleep, burning with fever, his breathing wheezing. Mama Dupe waited for her with a worried face. The compresses brought it down a bit, but Ngozi, this is no longer normal. This child needs to see a doctor. A good one. The one in the city. "I know," Ngozi said, kneeling beside the bed, caressing her son's hot forehead. "I know." She stayed there watching him sleep, listening to that wheeze in his little chest that frightened her so much. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to cry. In silence, so as not to wake him. Tears of helplessness, fear, infinite exhaustion. She took the crumpled receipt from her apron pocket. 0. Enough. She looked at it under the yellowish light of the lamp. "Enough," she repeated in a whisper. You don't know what enough is. You have no idea. She was going to tear it. She was going to tear it to pieces and throw it in the trash along with the memory of that cold man and his world of expensive watches and stone hearts. But something stopped her. That night, exhausted, she left it on the bedside table and fell asleep embracing her son. She couldn't know that that receipt was not the end of the story. It was merely the beginning. Because the next morning, as she cleared the tables from the previous shift that had been left pending, Nosy would find something else, something that man had left, something that was not a humiliation. It was a folded, hidden, secret note, and what that note said was going to turn her whole life upside down. The alarm clock rang at 5 a.m., as every morning, but Ngozi was already awake. She had been like that for hours, sitting on the edge of the bed, listening to Chike's breathing. The fever had subsided a little during the night, but the wheezing in the child's chest hadn't gone away, and every time he coughed, Ngozi felt as if a hand squeezed her heart. She touched his forehead with her lips. Warm, better than the night before, but not well, never quite well. Mummy has to go to work, my love, she whispered to him. Mama Dupe will take care of you. Be a good boy and take your syrup, okay? Chike barely opened his eyes, those big, dark eyes so much like his father's, and nodded half asleep. Are you going to bring cake? He murmured. Ngozi felt a lump in her throat. The child loved the eatery's cake, and she, when she could, saved him a piece of what they were going to throw away. If there's any left, I'll bring you some, I promise. She tucked him in, gave him a kiss, and quietly got ready. As she tied her hair in front of the broken mirror in the bathroom, her gaze fell on the bedside table. There it was, the crumpled receipt from the previous afternoon. 0. Enough. For a moment, she felt that pang of humiliation again, but she forced herself to take a deep breath. She didn't have time for anger. She had a shift to complete and a debt to pay. She put the receipt in her apron pocket, not really knowing why, perhaps to remind herself that there were still cruel people in the world, perhaps simply because she hadn't slept well and wasn't thinking clearly. She stepped out into the dark, cold street, left Chike with Mama Dupe, and walked the 8 blocks to the Baobab. The sky was beginning to lighten when she arrived. She unlocked the door with her key, turned on the lights, and started the coffee machine. The smell of coffee was, as always, the only comforting thing about the morning. Mama Nkechi arrived shortly after, grumbling about the cold. How's the boy this morning? Better, a little better. Are you taking him to the doctor this week? As soon as I get paid, Mama Nkechi. As soon as I get paid. The cook looked at her with that mix of affection and reproach of older women who have seen too much. Nosy, my child, that as soon as I get paid has been going on for months. Some things don't wait. Ngozi didn't respond. She took a cloth and began wiping down the tables that had been left from the closing shift the night before, because the cleaner hadn't come. It was one more task, added to the 1,000 she already did. She didn't complain. She never complained. It was when she reached the secluded booth at the back, the same one where the man in the black suit had sat, that it happened. Ngozi wiped the table, picked up a couple of used napkins, straightened the salt shaker, and as she lifted the small plastic flower vase in the center, she saw something underneath, a piece of paper folded into quarters, carefully hidden under the vase, where no one would find it unless they cleaned that table thoroughly. Ngozi frowned, picked it up. It was thick, expensive paper, creamy white, very different from the eatery's cheap receipts. She unfolded it with clumsy fingers. Inside, written in the same elegant, firm handwriting that had written, "Enough," it said, "Today's tip was not on the receipt. If you have the courage to look for it, come tomorrow, Friday, at 11 a.m. to this address. Ask for EN. What you saw as a humiliation was a test. You did not fail it. Bring the child if you wish. EN. And below it, an address in the city center, in the good part, among the glass buildings." Ngozi read the note 3 times. 4. Her heart pounded. "What's that?" Mama Nkechi asked, approaching. "Nothing," Ngozi said, quickly folding the paper. "Just trash." But Mama Nkechi, who had a hawk eye, had already caught a glimpse of the handwriting. "That calligraphy," she squinted. "It's from yesterday's man, the one who wrote, 'Enough.' What did he leave? Let me see." Ngozi hesitated, but she knew, Mama Nkechi, she wouldn't leave her alone. She handed her the note. Mama Nkechi read it, moving her lips. When she finished, she looked up, alarmed. "Ngozi, no, don't even think about it. I'm not going, Mama Nkechi. Of course not. A man you don't know, who humiliates you with a piece of paper, who leaves you a hidden note, like a stalker, and asks you to go to an address and bring your child. For God's sake, my daughter, What world do you live in? This smells bad. It smells of danger. I know, I'm not going. These things end up in the news. Women disappearing, human trafficking, anything. I'm not going. Mama Nkechi, Ngozi repeated, snatching the note from her hands, crumpling it, and putting it back in her apron pocket. Happy now? Mama Nkechi looked at her, not very convinced. Burn it. That's the best thing you can do with it. Ngozi nodded, but she didn't burn it. The day passed like all others. Long, tiring, full of aching feet and heavy dishes. But something had changed. Every time she put her hand in her pocket and brushed against the folded paper, a question hammered in her head. Today's tip was not on the receipt. What did that mean? What kind of test? And why her? Why would a man like that, with a 10 million watch and a suit that cost more than her year's rent, bother to leave a hidden note for a simple waitress? It was a test. You did not fail it. Ngozi didn't understand. And what we don't understand sometimes attracts us more than it frightens us. In the middle of the afternoon, during a break, she took out the note and read it again. The address, the glass area, ask for EN. She took out her phone and looked up the address. On the map, a building appeared, a huge, mirrored one with a name engraved at the entrance. Nwabweze Group. Nwabweze Group. Chief Emeka Nwabweze, the building's review stated, one of the most powerful businessmen in the country, owner of hotels, construction companies, half the port. A man whose photo appeared in business magazines with headlines like The Ice Magnate or The Most Elusive Bachelor. Ngozi stared at the photo. It was him, no doubt. The same sharp face, the same tense jaw, the same eyes that for a second had stopped on hers. The man who had left her 0 tip and the word enough was one of the richest men in the country. Ngozi felt dizzy, leaned her back against the kitchen wall. Are you all right, my daughter? Mama Nkechi asked. Yes, just tired. But it wasn't tiredness. It was the vertigo of something too big, too strange, too far out of her world of mended uniforms and hospital debts. Why would a man like Chief Emeka Nwabweze notice her? What test? What did he want? Possibilities crowded her head, and almost all of them were ugly. Mama Nkechi's warnings echoed. Rich men, poor women, things that end up in the news. Ngozi wasn't naive. She knew how the world worked. She knew what certain men with money believed they could buy. And still, there was one sentence she couldn't get out of her head, not the one about the test. Another, bring the child, if you wish. How did he know about Cheek? She had never mentioned her son, never. Then she remembered Mama Dupe's message, her face breaking for an instant behind the bar, her held breath. He had been watching her. He had seen everything. He had understood that this woman who smiled tirelessly, silently carried the burden of a sick child. And the fact that a stranger had seen through her mask scared her more than anything else, because Ngozi had built her entire life around not letting anyone see her pain, and that man had seen it immediately. That night, she arrived home more confused than tired. Chike still had the wheeze in his chest, but the fever had subsided. She gave him the syrup, told him a story, put him to sleep, and then sat at the kitchen table under the yellowish light with the unfolded note in front of her. She made a decision. I'm not going, she said aloud, as if to convince herself. It's crazy. I have everything to lose and nothing to gain. She brought the note closer to the stove flame. She was going to burn it, as Mama Nkechi had said, but then she looked towards the small room where Cheek was sleeping. In the silence of the night, she heard that faint wheeze in her son's chest, that sound that reminded her every day that time was running out, that the money she needed wouldn't magically appear, that every week that passed without treatment was a week her child would never regain. And the hand holding the note over the flame trembled. Today's tip was not on the receipt. What if it wasn't a trap? What if it was an opportunity? Perhaps the only one life would ever offer her. She moved the paper away from the fire, folded it again, and put it away. She wouldn't sleep that night, she knew. She would toss and turn, torn between Mama Nkechi's fear and a mother's desperation, between common sense screaming, "Don't go," and a small, stubborn voice whispering, "What if?" At 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, listening to the wheezing breath of her son in the next room, Ngozi made the decision that would change her life forever. She would go. She would go to that address. At 11 a.m. to the glass building to ask for EN, not out of curiosity, not for the money, although God knew how much she needed it. She would go because she was a mother, and a mother, when her child is slowly drowning and she has no way to save him, is capable of crossing into hell itself if there is a single chance, just one, of finding salvation on the other side. I'm just going to listen to what he has to say, she promised herself in whispers, Nothing more. I'll listen, and if it smells bad, I'll take Cheek to Mama Dupes. I won't take any risks with him. She closed her eyes. Tomorrow she would face the man who had humiliated her. Tomorrow she would discover what was hidden behind that zero and that cruel word. Tomorrow, without knowing it, she would take the first step towards a destiny that she could never, even in her wildest dreams, have imagined. But that is already another part of the story. At 11:15 a.m. on Friday, Ngozi was standing on the pavement in front of the Nwabweze Group's glass building, her heart about to pound out of her chest. She hadn't brought Cheek. That had been her only non-negotiable condition with herself. Whatever happened, her son would remain safe at Mama Dupe's house. If this was a trap, she would face it alone. She had put on her only decent dress, a faded blue one she reserved for the few important occasions in her life. In front of the building, surrounded by men and women with briefcases, expensive heels, and impeccable suits, she felt more out of place than ever. People looked at her askance. A poor waitress in Millionaire territory. She was about to turn back. 3 times she took a step towards the street. 3 times she pulled it back. "I'm just listening to what he has to say," she repeated to herself, nothing more, and she entered. The lobby was huge, with white marble and high ceilings, a glass reception desk, and a security guard, who looked at her as one looks at someone who doesn't belong. "How can I help you?" the receptionist asked politely, but with distance. "I've come to Ngozi swallowed. I've come to see Chief Nwabweze. I have an appointment." At 11, the receptionist raised an eyebrow, clearly incredulous, and checked his screen. His expression suddenly changed. "Ngozi Okoro. Yes, they're waiting for you. 40th floor. Chief Nwabweze will see you in his office. Please accompany her," he said to an assistant, who appeared out of nowhere. Ngozi felt her legs weaken. They were waiting for her. Her name was in the system. That man had indeed planned all this. The elevator rose silently, dizzyingly, showing the city shrinking through the glass. 40 floors. Ngozi had never been so high in her life. Down below, somewhere, was her neighborhood, her eatery, her entire world, tiny. The doors opened to an office that looked like something out of a movie. An entire wall of windows, a view that encompassed the entire city, designer furniture, a solid baobab wood desk, shelves with leather-bound books, and standing by the window, with his back to her, hands in his pockets, was him. "You came," Emeka said without turning around. "I confess I wasn't sure you would." Ngozi didn't answer. Her throat was dry. Emeka turned. He wore another impeccable suit, gray this time. His face was still the same, sharp, serious, with that coldness that seemed sculpted in stone. But his eyes, when they saw her, had something different, an attention they hadn't had at the eatery. "Please sit down. I prefer to stand," Ngozi said, surprising herself with her own firmness. "I don't plan on staying long." Emeka observed her for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, a shadow of something akin to a smile crossed his face. "As you prefer." There was a tense silence. Ngozi decided to break it. If she had come all this way, it would be to say what was on her mind. "I don't know what kind of game this is," she began, and took the crumpled receipt and the folded note from her bag. She placed them on the baobab wood desk with a dry thud. "But I want you to know what I think. You came into my workplace. I served you for 2 hours with respect, with kindness, as I serve everyone. And you left me this." She pointed to the receipt. "0. Do you know what that means for a woman like me? Do you know what 0 tip means when you have a sick child and a debt that never ends?" Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. "You humiliated me in front of my colleagues with all the coldness in the world. And then, as if that wasn't enough, you leave me a little note hidden under a flower vase like a coward, talking about tests and secret tips. Well, here I am. I came. What do you want from me? Say it at once, because I have a child waiting for me, and I don't have time for the games of rich, bored men." She finished almost breathless. Her heart pounded in her chest. She had just spoken like that to one of the most powerful men in the country. She would probably be thrown out in seconds. But Emeka didn't get angry. On the contrary, he looked at her with an expression Ngozi couldn't decipher. Respect. Perhaps admiration, even. "You have character," he said softly. "I suspected it. Don't patronize me. I'm not." Emeka walked around the desk and approached, maintaining a prudent distance. "Ngozi, what I'm about to tell you will seem strange, perhaps offensive. I ask you to listen until the end before judging me. Can you do that, Ngozi?" She crossed her arms. "Speak." Emeka took a deep breath. For the first time, his coldness cracked just slightly, revealing something tired, something wounded underneath. The zero tip was not an insult. It was a test, a deliberate test. A test of what? Of your character. He walked towards the window. Do you know how many people surround me every day, Miss Okoro? Hundreds employees, partners, supposed friends, and do you know what they all have in common? They are kind to me out of self-interest. They smile at me because I have money. They flatter me because it benefits them. I have lived so many years surrounded by masks that I no longer remember what a sincere person's face looks like. He turned to her. A week ago, I decided to do an experiment. I started going to places where no one knows who I am, modest restaurants, neighborhood cafeterias, and there I behave like the worst of customers. Cold, dry, demanding, and in the end, I leave zero tip and a cruel word. I want to see how people react when they think they won't get anything from me. When they discover that the difficult customer is also a miser. Ngozi was starting to understand. And what reactions do you get? Insults, almost always. One waitress chased me into the street, screaming at me. A waiter spat in my coffee, he said with a grimace. Others stopped talking to me, served me grudgingly, treated me with contempt, as soon as they sensed there would be no reward. And I understand them. I deserve it in a way. And me? Ngozi asked. Emeka looked at her intently. Not you. You treated me with the same kindness from beginning to end. When you picked up that receipt, when you saw the zero and the enough, your colleague wanted to go out and fight with me. I heard her, and you stopped her. Do you remember what you said? Ngozi remembered every word. I said I had no energy for pride, only for survival. Exactly. Emeka's voice softened. In the midst of humiliation, with a sick child waiting for you, without a dime, you chose dignity over anger. You didn't insult me. You didn't chase me. You didn't break down in front of others. You simply continued to be yourself. That, Ngozi, is something money cannot buy, and it is exactly what I have been looking for years without finding. Ngozi didn't know what to say. All the anger she had brought with her began to falter, replaced by a deep confusion. I still don't understand what you want from me. I know, and I'm not yet ready to tell you everything. Emeka took the receipt from the table, looked at it, and then pulled an envelope from a drawer. But first, let me correct my mistake. This is the true tip your service deserved that afternoon. He extended the envelope to her. Ngozi didn't take it. I don't want your money. It's not charity. It's what you honestly earned. The rest we will discuss later. I said I don't want your money. Ngozi repeated, stepping back. I didn't come for that. I came because... She stopped. Because the truth was too painful to say aloud. I came because my son is slowly dying, and you were my only crazy hope. I came to understand, and I understand now. You are a lonely, wounded man who plays with people to see if anyone is real. Well, congratulations, you found someone real, a poor woman, a single mother, a nobody. And now what? Do you feel better? The words fell like stones, and for the first time, Chief Emeka Nwabweze, the ice magnate, the elusive bachelor, lowered his gaze. No, he said in a very low voice. I don't feel better. I feel ashamed. The silence that followed was long and heavy. Ngozi looked at him, and for an instant, behind the grey suit and the 40 floors of height and the unimaginable fortune, she saw a man, just a man, as broken in his own way as she was. She picked up the note from the table. I'm leaving, she said. I'm giving this back to you. I don't need reminders of that afternoon. Ngozi, she stopped at the door. Your son. Emeka's voice was different now, almost vulnerable. What's wrong with him? Ngozi clenched the note in her fist. Something with his chest. He breathes poorly. He needs a specialist. Tests. Treatment I can't afford. Why do you care? Emeka took a moment to respond. Because there was a time, he said at last, when I, too, was a poor child with a father who couldn't afford a doctor, and I know exactly the sound a mother's fear makes when she thinks she's going to lose her child. Ngozi froze. That confession didn't fit anything she had imagined about that man, but she wasn't ready to believe him. Not yet. Goodbye, Chief Nwabweze, she said, and left the office. In the elevator, as the city grew before her eyes again, Ngozi realized she was trembling, and that against all logic, against all of Mama Nkechi's warnings, against all her common sense, a part of her didn't want to leave. But what Ngozi didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that upstairs, on the 40th floor, Chief Emeka Nwabweze had stood looking at the door she had exited for a long time, and that for the first time in many years, something inside that Iceman had very slowly begun to melt. She also didn't know that this encounter would be far from the last. 3 days passed without news. Ngozi returned to her routine as if nothing had happened. The double shifts, the swollen feet, the 5 a.m. coffee, the wheezing in Cheek's chest that wasn't improving. She told Mama Nkechi everything about the encounter. She couldn't keep it to herself, and the cook crossed herself 3 times. You see, a madman, a bored millionaire playing with people like they're little mice. You did well to tell him to get lost, my daughter. Those people aren't to be trusted. I don't know, Mama Nkechi. In the end, he didn't seem like a madman. He seemed like a sad man. Sad men with money are the most dangerous of all. Stay away, Nuzi nodded. She fully intended to stay away. The problem was, she couldn't stop thinking about what he had said. I was also a poor child with a father who couldn't afford a doctor. Those words didn't fit a man like Chief Emeka Nwabweze, and yet, when he said them, there wasn't a hint of pretense in his voice. On the 4th day, a gleaming black car pulled up in front of the eatery. All the customers turned to look. Customers of the Baobab didn't usually get out of such cars, but from the back seat, Chief Emeka Nwabweze indeed descended, in his impeccable suit and his otherworldly air. Mama Nkechi, from the kitchen, swore under her breath. Emeka entered, rang the bell, and sat, of course, in the same secluded booth at the back. He waited. Ngozi, behind the counter, felt all the blood rush to her face. For a moment, she thought of asking another colleague to serve him, but no, if Ngozi was anything, she was brave. She approached with the menu. I thought you were done playing with me, she said in a low voice so only he could hear her. I didn't come to play. I came to talk, for real this time, without tests, without tricks. Emeka looked at her. Can you give me 10 minutes when your shift ends? I'll wait for you outside. If you don't come out, I'll understand, and I'll never bother you again. You have my word. Ngozi looked at him for a long time, then nodded slightly. I finish at 4. At 4:10 p.m., Ngozi left the eatery. The black car was still there. Emeka was standing, leaning against it, no driver in sight. He opened the passenger door for her. Do you mind if we drive a bit? There's a place I want to take you. It's not far, and it's not dangerous, I promise. You can send your friend the car's license plate, if it reassures you. Ngozi, who had already noted the license plate and sent it to Mama Nkechi with instructions to call the police if she didn't hear from her in 2 hours, got into the car. They drove in silence for a while. They left the city towards the outskirts, towards a humble, old neighborhood that Ngozi hadn't expected. Small houses, cracked streets, laundry hanging between windows. Emeka stopped the car in front of a modest little house with peeling paint. I was born here, he said. I grew up here. My father was a laborer. My mother washed other people's clothes. We were poor, Ngozi, truly poor, the kind who count every coin for bread. Emeka looked at the house, his eyes lost in another time. When I was 8 years old, my younger sister, Amara, fell ill with a heart condition. She needed an operation. My parents knocked on every door, borrowed, pleaded, humiliated themselves before everyone who had money. No one helped, no one. The rich people in the village looked at us as you imagined me, with contempt, like dirt. He paused. It was difficult for him. Amara died. She was 6 years old, the same age as your cheek now. Ngozi felt the air freeze in her lungs. I'm so sorry, she whispered. My father never recovered. He died a few years later. They said it was his heart, but I know it was from grief. Emeka clenched his jaw. I swore 2 things that day by my sister's grave. First, that I would never again be poor, and I kept that promise. I worked like an animal, studied on scholarship, started companies, won, lost, won again. By 35, I was one of the richest men in the country. And the second promise? Emeka took a moment to respond. That when I had the money, I would help. That no poor child would have to die like my sister did, for not being able to afford a doctor. He bowed his head. But do you know what happened, Ngozi? Money slowly changed me, without me realizing it. I surrounded myself with fake people, with flatterers, with women who only wanted my fortune. I became distrustful, cold, hard. I forgot where I came from. I forgot my second promise. For years, I only fulfilled the first one, to get rich and protect myself from everyone. He turned to her. Until one day, not long ago, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. I saw a bitter man, alone, with no one real by his side, and I asked myself, is this what you've become? One of those rich people who despised your family? That's when I started the tests. Those cruel tests, I admit. I wanted to find someone who was still real, someone who would remind me that kindness exists. I needed to find them, and to believe again, and to finally start fulfilling my second promise. Ngozi's eyes were filled with tears. And you found me. I found you. Emeka looked at her with a new intensity. A mother who, in the midst of hell, did not lose her dignity or her tenderness, who stopped her friend from insulting me, who chose to survive with her head held high. Ngozi, you are everything my family was, and everything the world despised. And I will not allow your son to suffer the same fate as my sister, not while I have the means to prevent it. The silence in the car was dense, charged with emotion. I can't accept your money, Ngozi finally said, her voice breaking. Not out of pride, but out of fear, because people don't give away fortunes without asking for something in return. And I have nothing to give, and I don't want to owe anyone what I love most in this world. I'm not asking for anything in return. Everyone asks for something, Chief Nwabweze. Sooner or later, Emeka looked at her, and then said something Ngozi didn't expect. You're right to be distrustful. If I were you, I'd be distrustful too. So I'm not asking you to accept anything today. I'm only asking you to let a doctor, a good doctor, see Chike, without obligation, without debt, just a consultation. If after that you want to disappear from my life, I will respect it. But at least we will know what your son has and what he needs. Does that seem fair? Can a mother deny her child a medical consultation out of pride? And there it was, the precise blow, because he was right. Ngozi could reject the money, she could reject him, but she could not as a mother, deny Chike the possibility of a real doctor examining him. A consultation, she said. Just that, and I'll pay what I can, even if it's in installments. A consultation without debt, tomorrow if you like. Ngozi nodded, defeated by the only cause worth being defeated for, her son. What neither of them saw while they spoke inside the car was the other vehicle that slowly passed by on the street, a red sports car driven by a woman with dark hair and dark glasses who immediately recognized the magnate. Bisola, Emeka's ex-wife, the woman who years ago had betrayed him with his business partner, who had kept a portion of his fortune in the divorce and had never quite accepted losing the richest man she had ever had. Bisola slowed down, looked inside the black car, saw Emeka, and saw next to him a humble woman in a faded dress, talking to him with an intimacy that churned her insides. "And who is this?" she murmured, narrowing her eyes behind her glasses. "A waitress? Seriously, Emeka?" She took out her phone, took a photo. "We'll find out who you are, darling, and we'll make sure you don't get a centimeter closer to what's mine." The red car sped up and disappeared down the street. Ngozi, oblivious to everything, looked at Emeka and felt for the first time in years something dangerously close to hope. She didn't know that at that very moment, she had just gained an enemy, and that enemy would stop at nothing. The consultation changed everything. The next morning, a car picked up Ngozi and Chike. The child, who had never ridden in such an elegant car, had his nose pressed against the window, marveling, for a while forgetting the cough that plagued him. Ngozi squeezed his hand. She was afraid, not of the doctor, but of what the doctor might say. They were taken to a private clinic that was nothing like the crowded public hospitals Ngozi was used to. Here there were no queues, no broken chairs, no 6-hour waits. Here they were personally received by Dr. Obina, one of the best pediatric pulmonologists in the country, they were told. Emeka was not there. He had promised. No debt, no pressure, just a consultation, but he had arranged everything. Dr. Obina examined Chike with a patience and delicacy that moved Ngozi. He performed tests, x-rays, listened to his breathing for a long time, tickled him to make him laugh and cough again. The child, delighted with so much attention, behaved like a champion. When he finished, the doctor called Ngozi into his office. "Mrs. Okoro, I'm going to be frank with you because I believe you're the type who prefers the truth." "Always," Ngozi said, her heart in her throat. "Your son has a chronic bronchial condition aggravated by the lack of adequate treatment. The good news is that it is treatable. The bad news is that it's a prolonged treatment. Specific medication, respiratory therapy, regular checkups, and probably a change of environment away from humidity and dust. With that, in 1 or 2 years, Chike can have a completely normal life, run, play, everything." Ngozi felt tears well up without permission. "And without treatment?" The doctor looked at her seriously. "Without treatment, the condition worsens. Each crisis damages the lungs a little more. In time, I don't want to alarm you, but it's not something you can just ignore. That wheezing you hear at night is a warning." Ngozi closed her eyes. Hope and terror mixed. "How much does the treatment cost?" The doctor told her a figure. Ngozi felt the ground open beneath her feet. It was an amount that she, earning what she earned, could not gather even in 10 years of work. 10 years that Chike didn't have. She left the clinic with her child by the hand and a sentence in her soul. Her son had a cure. He had a cure. And she couldn't afford it. It was the worst of tortures, knowing that salvation existed and was out of her reach. That afternoon, Emeka called her. Ngozi didn't want to talk, but she answered. "How was the consultation?" he asked. "He has a treatment," Ngozi said, and her voice broke. "My son has a cure, except that a lump formed in her throat, except that I can't afford it, so it's like not having one. Do you know what that's like, Chief Nwabweze? To know your child can heal and not be able to do anything. It's hell. It's utter hell." There was a silence on the other end of the line. "Ngozi," he said at last, "come to my office tomorrow, please. I have a proposal, and this time it's not a test or a game. It's something serious. Listen to me, and if you say no, I will accept it. But please listen to me." Ngozi should have said no, but a mother whose child can heal doesn't say no to anything. The next day, she returned to the glass building. This time, she was received with respect. She went up to the 40th floor. Emeka was waiting for her, and this time he wasn't alone. Beside him was an older man with a serious air and a folder of documents. "Ngozi, I'd like to introduce Barrister Adekunle, my lawyer. I want him to be present, so you can see that everything I'm about to propose is legal, transparent, and in writing, no tricks." Ngozi sat down, distrustful. "I'm listening." Emeka took a deep breath. "I'm offering you a job, a real one, with a contract, a salary, with rights." He slid a document across the table. "I need an administrator for a foundation I'm setting up, a foundation dedicated to paying for medical treatments for children without resources. The promise I told you about, remember? The one I made to my sister. I'm finally going to fulfill it. And I need someone at the helm who truly understands poverty, who doesn't see it from a desk, who has lived it, someone with heart, with honesty, with good judgment. I want you." Ngozi blinked in disbelief. I'm a waitress. I don't know how to administer a foundation. I didn't finish my studies. I have no idea how to. You have the one thing that can't be learned in university. You know what it feels like. The rest can be taught. You'll have training. You'll have a team." Emeka looked at her. "The salary is this." He pointed to a figure in the contract. Ngozi looked at it. It was more than she earned in a year, per month. And as the foundation's first beneficiary, Emeka continued, "Your son, Chaik's treatment covered 100%, starting tomorrow, not as a gift, but as part of the foundation's mission. No child should die for lack of money. Chaik is exactly the kind of child we are going to help." Barrister Adekunle intervened in a calm voice. "Madam, I have personally reviewed everything. The contract is completely legal. You don't incur a debt. You owe nothing. It is employment with a salary and a medical benefit that covers your son like any employee. There's no fine print, no hidden conditions. You can take it. Show it to another lawyer you trust. Take all the time you need." Ngozi stared at the contract without really seeing it. Her head was spinning. It was too good, too perfect, and for that very reason, it was frightening. "Why?" she asked, looking Emeka in the eyes. "Tell me the truth. Why me? There are thousands of more qualified people. Why this waitress? What do you really want from me? And don't tell me it's because of my heart. Men don't give fortunes to women because of their heart." Emeka held her gaze, and for the first time, instead of responding with speeches, he was completely sincere. "Because ever since I saw you at that eatery, I haven't stopped thinking about you." He said it softly, and it was clear it was difficult for him. "Not just for your kindness, but for everything, for your strength, for your eyes, for the way you carry the whole world without breaking. I won't lie to you, Ngozi. You matter more to me than a woman I just met should matter. And I know this complicates everything. I know now you'll think the job is an excuse to keep you close, and perhaps in part it is. That's why I brought the lawyer. That's why I put everything in writing. So you know that whether you accept my feelings or not, the job and your son's treatment are yours, without conditions, without you having to give me anything in return, not even a smile if you don't want to." The silence was absolute. Ngozi felt 1,000 things at once. Confusion, fear, a dangerous emotion she dared not name, and above all, the image of Chaik, healthy, running, laughing, breathing without that terrifying wheeze. "I need to think about it," she said, her voice trembling. "I can't decide something like this now. It's too much." "Take all the time you need," Emeka said. But time, that very night, decided for her. Ngozi arrived home and found Mama Dupe pale at the door. "Ngozi, thank God. Chike got very ill. He couldn't breathe. I called an ambulance. It's already on its way." Ngozi's world stopped. She rushed inside. Chaik was in bed, his lips blue, fighting for every breath, his little chest rising and falling with desperate effort. The wheezing had turned into a horrible, choked sound. "My love, Chaik, Mummy's here, Mummy's here." The ambulance was taking time. The neighborhood was far from everything. Ngozi, her hands trembling, took out her phone and, without a second thought, dialed the only number that could save her son at that instant. "Emeka," she said, and for the first time, she called him by his name. "My son can't breathe. The ambulance isn't here. Please help me, I beg you. Where are you?" Emeka's voice was immediate, urgent. "Give me the address. Don't hang up. I'm coming. I'm calling the clinic right now. Hold on, Ngozi, hold on. You're not alone." And as Ngozi held her son in her arms, praying, pleading, she felt that the decision was already made. Not for contracts, not for money, but because in the worst moment of her life, there was only one person in the world who responded. Emeka arrived before the ambulance. His car braked sharply in front of the small house, and he ran out without his jacket, his tie askew, unrecognizable to anyone who knew the cold ice magnate. Behind him came a second vehicle, Dr. Obinna himself, with an emergency kit, alerted by Emeka. "He's here, inside," Ngozi cried. The doctor entered, assessed Chaik in seconds, placed an oxygen mask on him, and administered medication that gradually eased that terrible struggle to breathe. Color slowly returned to the child's face. The wheezing softened. Cheek opened his eyes, scared, but alive. "He's stabilized," the doctor said, "but we need to take him to the clinic now. He needs observation and to start treatment immediately. We can't wait any longer." "Whatever is necessary," Emeka said without hesitation. "Whatever it takes." They transferred Cheek to the private clinic. That night, Ngozi spent the entire time by her son's bed, holding his little hand, while the machines gently beeped and the oxygen did its work. Emeka also stayed, sitting in a chair in the hallway, not leaving, not asking for anything, simply being there. Towards dawn, Cheek slept peacefully for the first time in months, without wheezing, breathing deeply and cleanly. Ngozi went out into the hallway. Emeka stood up when he saw her. "How is he?" "Asleep, breathing well. The doctor says he started treatment and will recover." Ngozi's eyes filled with tears, that he's going to have a normal life. And then, without thinking, without calculating, Ngozi did something she never would have imagined. She hugged Chief Emeka Nwabweze, hugged him tightly, with the full weight of fear and relief and gratitude. And he, the man who couldn't remember the last time someone had truly hugged him, put his arms around her and held her. "Thank you," Ngozi whispered against his chest. "You saved my son. Thank you." "You don't have to thank me," he murmured. "This is what money is for, Ngozi. This is what it should always have been for." That morning, Ngozi signed the contract, not for the salary, not out of fear. She signed it because she had understood that this man was real, that behind the ice there was a heart that had suffered as much as hers, and because her son was finally going to live. The following weeks were almost a dream for a time. Chaik improved day by day. The treatment, now uninterrupted, worked its slow but sure miracle. The terrifying wheeze that had accompanied Ngozi's nights for years disappeared, never to return. The child grew strong, healthy, noisy, mischievous, full of the energy that the illness had stolen from him. He ran through the mansion's garden chasing butterflies, climbed trees, shouted, laughed heartily. Each of those laughs was, for Ngozi, a victory that no amount of money in the world could buy. "Look, Mummy, look how fast I run," the child would shout, and Ngozi would watch him from the porch, her eyes filled with happy tears, remembering the days when that same little one could barely breathe. Bisola, on the other hand, paid for everything she had done. The judicial investigation proceeded relentlessly. The bribes, the slanders, the false report to Child Protection Services, the attempt to fraudulently obtain a minor's medical history, everything came to light. Kunle, to save himself, testified against her in great detail. Bisola lost her contacts, her reputation, her invitations to the elegant dinners where she once reigned. The same people who flattered her now turned their backs on her. She ended up alone, bitter, exiled from the only world that mattered to her, the world of appearances. Kunle, for his part, was marked as a traitor and opportunist, despised even by those who had used him. Divine justice, the kind that may be slow but never forgets, had done its work. The foundation, meanwhile, flourished. Under Ngozi's direction, in its first year, it helped over 200 underprivileged children receive life-saving treatments. Ngozi, the former waitress, became known not for her money, but for her dedication. She visited hospitals, spoke with desperate families, took their hands and told them the words no one had told her in her worst moments. "You are not alone. We will help you. Your child will live." And every time she said it, she honored the memory of her father, Pa Chijioke, the poor man who had given everything for a friend. Mama Nkechi, the old cook, was appointed by Ngozi as her right hand in the foundation, in charge of receiving and comforting families. "All my nagging people, all my life must be good for something," the old woman joked, though deep down her heart swelled with pride for the girl she had seen humiliated and now saw shine. And between Emeka and Ngozi, the love that had been born of destiny became definitive. One afternoon, in the same garden where Cheek chased butterflies, Emeka knelt before her, not with an ostentatious millionaire's ring, but with something far more valuable, the two baobab medallions joined together, hanging from a single chain. "Ngozi," he said, his voice trembling, he who never trembled, "our fathers promised each other that true friendship always finds its way home. I want to make you a different promise. I want you to be my home, you and Chike, forever. Will you marry me?" Ngozi, crying and laughing, could only nod while Cheek, who had understood just enough, shouted from the tree, "Say yes, mummy, then Emeka can be my daddy." And Ngozi said yes. The wedding was not the media event many expected from the ice magnate. By mutual choice, it was a simple and bright ceremony, held in a garden, surrounded only by the people who truly mattered. Mama Nkechi cried rivers. Mama Dupe, the neighbor who had so often cared for Cheek, was a bridesmaid. Dr. Obinna attended as a dear family friend, and Cheek, dressed in a small suit, beaming with pride, carried the rings down the aisle with a solemnity that drew laughter and tears from everyone. Ngozi walked down the aisle in a simple white dress, and on her chest, the two twin baobab medallions. Her father wasn't there in body, but he was in every step, in every tear, in the reunion of a 40-year-old promise. "Today a circle closes," Emeka said in his vows. "Your father saved my family when we had nothing, and you, unknowingly, saved what was left of me, my heart that had been dead for years. I promise you before everyone that you will never lack anything, neither money, nor respect, nor love, especially love. I didn't come into your life looking for your fortune," Ngozi responded in hers. "I came humiliated with 0 tip, and the word enough, written as an insult. And look at me now. It turns out that enough was indeed enough. It was you. It was always you. Life took so much from me for so long that I stopped believing in happy endings. Today I believe again." They married under a clear sky, as guests applauded and Cheek jumped for joy. 2 years later, the mansion's garden bustled with life on a sunny morning. Cheek, now 8 years old, completely healthy, was playing football with a group of friends, shouting and laughing. And under the shade of the great baobab tree that Emeka had planted on their wedding day, "So it grows with our family," he had said, Ngozi gently rocked a stroller. Inside, a baby girl of a few months slept. She had her mother's green eyes and her father's strong character. They had named her Ireti, hope, because that was what this child represented. The hope that never dies, not even on the longest nights. The proof that after the cruelest winter, spring always returns. Emeka came out of the house with 2 cups of coffee and sat next to his wife. Nothing remained of the ice magnate. That cold and solitary man had disappeared, replaced by a father and a husband who smiled easily, who played with his children on the floor, who had finally learned what all his money was truly for. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, handing her a cup. Ngozi watched Cheek running, little Ireti sleeping, the baobab tree swaying in the breeze. "I'm thinking about that afternoon at the eatery," she said, smiling. "About that cold customer who left me 0 tip. You know, that was, without my knowing it, the best tip of my entire life." Emeka laughed and took her hand. On their fingers, the 2 wedding bands. On her chest, still the 2 baobab medallions. "Your father was right," he said. "True friendship always finds its way home. And look," she returned, "it found its way through you, through all of us." Ngozi rested her head on his shoulder. The sun cast a golden glow over the garden, over the children, over the family that destiny, kindness, and a 40-year-old promise had woven against all odds. And as she watched that scene, which in her days of poverty and humiliation she would never have dared to dream of, Ngozi thought of all the women who, like her, one day serve tables with swollen feet and broken hearts, who silently endure contempt, who raise their children alone with no other weapon than their dignity. And she wanted to tell them all something. Never, ever let someone's contempt define your worth. No matter how low the world makes you feel, how many zeros they write, how many times they tell you that you don't belong, that you don't deserve, that you've had enough. Your dignity is not in what others think of you, but in how you choose to behave when no one is watching, when nothing seems to make sense, when the easiest thing would be to give up or strike back. Because kindness, though it may take time, always pays off, and dignity, though it may be costly, never betrays those who preserve it. Ngozi learned this from her father, and her father, a man who died as poor as he lived, was in the end the richest of all, because his kindness, sown 40 years ago, in the heart of a child named Emeka, returned multiplied to save his daughter and his grandson. That was the true fortune, the only one that is never lost. Under the baobab tree, as the children laughed and the coffee steamed, Ngozi and Emeka looked at each other, and in that gaze was everything. The pain overcome, the love found, justice served, the promise honored. The humiliated waitress and the millionaire with a broken heart had found in each other the home they had both lost, and they finally lived in peace. Because sometimes life's cruelest zeros hide, without our knowing it, the beginning of the most beautiful story, the end.